Hey everyone, welcome back to Eric's Everyday Watches. As always, if you like this video, if you find it helpful, please do me a favor, hit the like button and consider subscribing. The watch we're looking at today is the Citizen AW1710. Now on Citizen's Italy site, it calls this the Seaplane. I don't know why. But I happened to pick this up at the Amazon sale for $39. Maybe you got in on that deal too. Otherwise, your chances of scoring that deal again? Pretty much none. But this watch is currently available online for between $150 and $170. So we're going to base this review on the price point of this watch being around $160. It comes in Citizen's standard packaging, and as I've said before, I like this packaging. It's not the fanciest or the most expensive, but Citizen makes a nice presentation while keeping costs down. It's a black and white rigid box with a full wood grain on the bottom half, nicely applied both outside and inside the box. Looking closely, you can see that it is indeed a faux wood. There appears to be some kind of textured wrapping applied to the box, but most people would never look that close, and it does feel like actual wood. There's a white polyurethane top, which is hinged at the back and folds over the front. The Citizen logo is printed on the top. Inside, we have a thin piece of foam protecting the watch, and the watch itself is displayed on a nice hefty black foam pillow. This is a really nice presentation for a watch with a price point around $160. The case on this watch is stainless steel, with most of it being a brushed finish. The top of the case is brushed in a vertical direction, with the side of the case being brushed in a horizontal direction. The very top of the case has a high polished finish along with the inside of the lugs, which has this angular notch area. It's a nice touch which adds a little bit of flair when looking at your watch on your wrist. Now this watch has a fixed aluminum bezel. It does not rotate, and I think that's fine. Not every watch is a dive watch. The crown guard on this case is incorporated into the lugs since the crown is located at the 130 position. You know, I appreciate Citizen doing something a little different, mixing it up a little bit, being a little bit unusual. Now, in everyday use, I did find it a little harder to pull the crown out while wearing the watch because it is surrounded by the guards/lugs. If this case had an additional crown at the 1030 position, we would call it a bullhead. If it only had one crown at the 12 o'clock, it would be a unicorn. So I am going to call this a lopsided unicorn. That's right, there's a lopsided unicorn on the Seaplane. We'll see whether or not that catches on. As far as fit and finish, all the edges and corners on top of the case are nicely rounded off and are smooth to the touch. Now, as on most watches, the bottom of the case is slightly sharper, but not out of the ordinary, with one exception. The very bottom of the lug where the crown is, that point is kind of sharp. Now take that with a grain of salt because chances are most people would never notice this. I only notice it because I'm reviewing this watch, so I really look it over to try to point out all the pros and cons for you guys. It's sharp, but it's one small point on the watch which chances are you may never have ever noticed. I just thought it was worth noting. Inside the case, we have Citizen's Echo Drive J810 movement. Now that is a solar movement and the second hand does hack. It is rated at plus or minus 15 seconds per month and has a low charge indicator. Now it has a date feature but not a day feature. It also has a 240-day power reserve. Now Citizen's Italy site lists that as a 6-month power reserve. But my math comes out at 240 days, typically 30 days in a month. That is 8 months power reserve. I'm not sure what kind of fancy math Citizen is doing over in Italy. Maybe they got confused by all the different time zones. I don't know. As mentioned before, the crown is at the 130 position. It is 6 millimeters in width and 4 millimeters in depth, with a knurling pattern to it. It's integrated into the lug and feels like an appropriate size for this case. It is a simple push-pull crown with the first position adjusting the date and the second position adjusting the time. The date is printed white on black and is just unreadable. It's just too small to be helpful at all. The date window seems oddly positioned and crowds the number 3 on the dial. In my opinion, it would have been much nicer and useful to have it at the 4:30 position where it could have been larger and not compete with any of the Arabic numbers. There are a couple of different colorways available for this watch. I thought this one was the nicest with its use of warm colors and contrast. Now on the dial at the 12 o'clock position, we start off with the number 60 in a warm tan color. And I admit, that's a little odd. I'm all for changing it up and being a little bit of originality. But if anything, it seems like 60 belonged on the bezel where the Arabic numbers are already counting in tens, not on the dial. Below the 60, we have a straight line in that same tan color with a downward pointing arrow in a burnt orange. Again, a little odd, but I'm going to group all that together and count that as one odd unit. Below that, Citizen is printed directly on the dial. All the Arabic numbers and indices are lumed and embossed to add a little depth to the dial without the actual added cost of applying them. I think this was a smart move on Citizen's part. There are numbers located at the 4 compass points, and they offer good contrast between them and the black background. The sword-shaped hands are both lumed and with the minute hand outlined in white and the hour hand outlined in orange. On the second hand, we see a combination of those two colors used, with the majority being white and the tip in orange. Now that orange tip on the second hand does line up with the stick indices on the dial, and it's nice to see this attention to detail. The second hand on this watch does hit the markers dead on. The lume on the hands seem to glow much brighter than the lume on the numbers and the indices. And the hands take a lot less light to actually activate that lume. The lume is decent, but it does fade quickly. There is a 24-hour military time on the inside minute track, but it is so small it might as well not even be there. Overall, the dial has a very clean aesthetic to it. It's uncluttered and easy to read. Moving down the dial at the 6 o'clock positions, the only words that we see are Echo Drive. On top of all of this, there's a flat piece of mineral glass. Let's talk about the silicone strap on this watch. It's 22 millimeters wide at the lugs and tapers down to 20 millimeters at the last adjustment hole. It has a standard stainless steel buckle which is signed with the Citizen's name on it. It is a super comfortable strap. It's very soft and pliable. Now there is a 3D texture to the strap, the center of which I'm going to refer to that pattern as a 1975 Honda CB500T motorcycle with its original tires tread pattern. Now I know that's oddly specific, but it brings back fond memories for me, so I'm going to go with that. There are 2 keepers on the strap, and they can both be slid up and down the strap wherever you need them. Now there are 3 things I want to point out about this silicone strap. 1, like all silicone straps, it tends to attract and hold dust particles. 2, this is a curved end strap, and it does not lay flat when you set it down. The plus side of this is that there is a seamless transition between the case and the strap. The downside is that sometimes I like to take my watch off and just lay it down and not put it in the case. And since it doesn't lay flat, I have to put it on the side of the case, and I'm always nervous about adding extra scratches to the case because of this. And then the last thing I want to point out is I wish this end of the strap flared out slightly so the keeper would be held in place securely with the strap. Let's list out the specs for this watch. We have a mineral crystal, Citizen EcoDrive J810 movement, a diameter of 44 millimeters, a thickness of 10 millimeters, a lug width of 22 millimeters, and a lug-to-lug distance of 51 millimeters. So let's wrap up by going over the pros and cons. For pros, the dial has a very clean aesthetic and is very pleasing colorway. The time is very legible. I found the silicone strap to be soft and comfortable. It is a solo watch using Citizen's J810 movement. There's a uniqueness about it, both the shape of the case and the crown position, and it has an 8-month power reserve, at least according to my math. For cons, the date window. I found it to be unreadable. And again, the date window, I just didn't like the location. There's no need to crowd the number 3 when it could have been put at the 4:30 position. And finally, the lume is a little on the weak side. Even at a price point of $160, I think this is a solid watch, which is not a cookie cutter copy of a lot of other watches out there. It has a solid build and a solar movement which should be maintenance free for years, if not decades. What? You're still here? That's it, the video's over. Remember to hit the like and subscribe button. And come back next week.